What's up, YouTube? Welcome to my channel, The Mysterious Deaths of Icons and Legends. But before we get started, I just want to say please note that whatever I tell you may or may not be 100% true. I am not trying to catch a case, honey, because people be thirsty for money and I ain't trying to get sued. Now, that said, let's get to it. The topic of this video will be about the fine, sassy charmer, Sam Cooke. Now, Sam Cooke was born on January 22nd, 1931 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, to Reverend Charles Cooke Sr. and Annie Mae. No, it is not Anna Mae Bullock, who you all know as Miss Tina Turner. But anyways, now you all know the story of most artists back in the 50s and 60s. Of course, they started out as gospel singers. And Sam Cooke. So, Sam and I think some of his brothers, or none of them, I'm not really sure, joined a group called the Highway QCs. And later on, Sam joined the Soul Stirrers. Those are the Highway QCs. I don't know if you can see the picture up there. I hope you can. And this group is the Soul Stirrers. Sam is all the way up there at the top left. Now, once he got to this group, let me tell you, them young things up there in Chicago never seen a church a day before in their life. But once Sam started singing with this group, they said he sung a gospel song like it never been sung before. And they were just all up in the church, front row seats. He did pretty good, but like most other artists, he started getting a little tiresome. And of course, he was traveling with the Soul Stirrers, and whew, this man had children all across country. It's said that he at least have 7 children. Now, to test the waters, he decided to make a song. He took it from a gospel song called Wonderful, and he changed the song to Lovable. And he put it under Dale Cooke because he didn't know how the gospel community would react. So he decided to test the waters a little bit to see what he can come up with or if it would be any good. He's always had talent, and his family always knew he had talent as well. But you know, that didn't stop them little nosy church hat wearing women. Of course, they started talking about, oh, that sounded a little bit like Sam Cooke. Now, when he joined, these are some of his songs.
Darling, you sent me. I know you sent me.
You Send Me was his first number 1 hit. I believe with Specialty Records or RCA Records. And another one of his hits was and of course y'all already know the Legend song. 1 second, stupid ass. Alright, that's enough of that because y'all already know what the deal is. Some people be crying for once that song play. It's a really great song and it's really, really useful, especially back in those days because y'all know it was racism going on and all that mess. So Sam really did a number for that song. Now, let's get to the good part. the reason why we are here right now is to discuss Sam's death, his unfortunate death. I wish I was born around the time he was, because I'd probably be one of those women cross country with his baby. Boy, if he bite them lips one more time on stage. But anyways, singing was not enough for Sam. So he decided that he wanted to have his own record company, publishing company. And so with a partner, I believe his name was J.W. Alexander, came up with SAR Records. And this is where he wrote songs and he produced songs and published songs for other groups. One of the groups were the Valentinos. And he decided to bring in the gospel groups as well, because he wanted to stay close to gospel, even though he chose to go the other way and stick with the secular music, as they call it back in the day. As you can see right here, this man, Alan Klein, he was the downfall of our Sam Cooke. He was greedy, manipulative, and it is believed, and there is strong evidence pointing to the fact that he is the reason why Sam Cooke is dead. Like, he's the reason. Sam Cooke found out that he was stealing from him, and he was forging Sam Cooke's signature on documents, and it was just an entire mess. Before we continue on, let me give y'all a little background, okay? Now, it's saying that the mob had some involvement in Sam Cooke's murder. Now, in those days, there were two groups of people who basically had so much power over the United States. Certain states like New York, Los Angeles, and those two groups were the government, of course, and the mobs. The mobs, they illegally got their money, and they either bought businesses from, or they scare business owners into giving up ownership just so they could keep the money rolling. And the mobs actually own a few record companies. RCA Records was one of them, and there was another called Roulette Records, and there was a lot of artists being cheated out of their money or not getting any money at all, like royalties and things from their songs, from their music, because the mobs wanted to keep everything for themselves. And Sam Cooke just so happened to be in the midst of all of this, unwillingly though, because there are some sources out there that says he knew he was working with the mob. According to one of his brothers, though, some mobsters did visit him, after one of his shows in his dressing room, and either told him not to continue on with his own record company, or was trying to bribe him to let them have, a percentage of his profits. And he basically cursed them out and told them to get out of his face. He was not about to give nobody a percentage. And this is one thing that confused a lot of people, especially Sam Cooke's family, because they said Sam would have never put ownership into anybody's hands except his. Yes, he would let you, have a job, or he would let you do something, but he wasn't going to give full, complete ownership of any of his business. Like, he wasn't about to do that. And this is what made Alan Klein angry. He didn't necessarily like Sam Cooke. He just liked the fact that he was making money. And that wasn't enough. He wanted to make more money. Now, a little quick background on Alan Klein. Alan Klein used to work at an accounting firm, and somebody that was his mentor was a guy named oh crap, I can't say. Hold on. Sorry about that, guys. Some guy named Morris Levi. He owned Roulette Records, and he mentored Alan Klein. He had this artist named Rosie Hamill, and he stole song rights from her. And later, it was found out he was doing other illegal things, and he faked his death to avoid jail time. So, of course, guess who Alan Klein got this behavior from, with forging people's names and stealing their business ownerships? Morris Levi had ties with crime families that was tied to Lucky Luciano. Then there's another guy named Tommy Vastello, who, I guess he managed Jackie Wilson. And there's also a rumor that's saying that Jackie Wilson was hung over a balcony to give up, his song rights or a percentage of something that he owned. Which reminds me, because if y'all remember the scene from the Five Heartbeats where Big Red held the other guy over the balcony, all because the guy was like, hey, I need to talk about my royalties. I ain't been getting my money like I should have. So I guess that was, these, if y'all pay attention to movies, they'll actually show you things that actually happen, and they'll show you how things worked, especially back in those days. Now, let's get to, now that y'all know Alan Klein's motives and that he did have ties to mobs, and y'all already know the mobs, they, have policemen on their payrolls, they have other government officials on their payroll, so they could get away with certain crimes. And back in those days, the police definitely wasn't making a lot of money. So, yeah, they need that extra money on the side. And a lot of people were just racist. And it was said that it's like, hey, one less nigger to deal with. Now, Sam Cooke, why was he such a threat? Well, Alan Klein and anybody with ties to him was greedy, of course. That's the number one motive. And Sam Cooke was hanging out with Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. Malcolm X, he was a powerful guy. And he had a lot of things going on. So, they didn't want, and, Sam Cooke was, who is this black guy owning his own music rights, and he's starting his own companies. They didn't like that, of course not. And Malcolm X is, trying to talk about how they want separate lands and all of this, and he's planning on to take it to the courts, to the United Nations. Now, these two guys hanging out, it's not a good sign. Now, Muhammad Ali, he was just a boxer, big mouth. they saw him as this little goofy person, so they weren't too much concerned with him. Sam Cooke was just a threat. And I think the head of FBI that was in charge was J. Edgar Hoover. He was in charge at the time, definitely a racist. And anybody he saw fit as a threat, they had to go. Which will only explain why in just maybe like 2 months, Malcolm X is dead after Sam Cooke. Two guys who coincidentally have very positive outlooks on the community and who seem to be very powerful. So that's the motive. Now, these little pictures that you're seeing, I'm going to read out this document right here. This is a document that Sam Cooke had, and it shows his name, for a company, and he's the president. James W. Alexander. He's black, in case y'all wondering. And then Alan Klein was secretary. Now, this is a document for the same company that shows Alan Klein as president, James W. Alexander as vice president, and some other two. I think the lady is Alan Klein's wife, and then I don't know who this other guy is, this Henry guy. But this is to show you that Alan Klein forged signatures and documents changes on a date that Sam Cooke wasn't even around. So Sam Cooke couldn't have approved of any of these changes. Now, as you can see here, this is the so-called motel that Sam Cooke was at. Now, the original story is that he was at this restaurant to meet up with some associates, and then he sees this Elisa Boyer chick, and they start, smooching in a booth somewhere, and then they go to this club called PJ's. May I add, PJ's and Martoni's, which is the restaurant he was at before, is known to be owned by mobs. Like I said, most of the businesses were, and it was an Italian restaurant, so of course, most of the mobs were Italians. So Sam Cooke and this chick goes to PJ's. He conversate with a few people there, and then they leave and go to this motel. Now, it's saying by lots of different people, Sam Cooke would not take a lady to no cheap motel. He was upscale, he was classy, and he would go to a more maybe like 4-star hotel. So once they get into the room, now this girl is saying that Sam Cooke was rough with her. She begged him to take her home, and he just didn't listen. They get to the motel. He goes in to sign in, and they say, okay, the hotel manager, Bertha Franklin, she sees one of her stories, because it said that she changed her story at least 4 times. This Bertha chick, sees Elisa Boyer still sitting in the car while Sam is signing in. Red flag number 1. Okay, if you felt threatened, if you felt like he was trying to rape you, which is part of her story, which is what she said in court, why didn't you get out the car and run? Like, that's red flag number 1. Why wouldn't you get out the car and run? If you felt like you didn't want to be here, you begged him to take you home, and instead he takes you to a motel. Moving on. Once they get in the room, He pushes her on the bed. This is what she's saying. And then he rips off her clothes. Then he goes to the bathroom. That's when she gets up. She grabs her clothes. In court, she did not mention that she grabbed some of his clothes. She runs out the door, runs to a telephone booth to call the police. It said that he comes out the bathroom, sees her gone and his things gone, and he runs and knocking on the manager's door, the hotel manager. He's banging on it. He busts through there, and he's just he gets violent with the hotel manager. All of a sudden, he gets violent, and then she shoots him 3 times. 3 times she shoots him is what she says. And then she says she takes a broom and she beat him. If you shot him 3 times, first of all, you shouldn't have to get no other weapon, and you shouldn't have to continuously beating him. That's red flag number 2. Red flag number 3 is that in court, it was not said that he had all these bruises on his body and that his hands were broken, his legs were broken. He had a big lump on the back of his head, and he was shot with a 22 gun, a 22 pistol, but I think the hotel manager had a different type of gun. None of these things were brought up in court. Why? Well, as I said before, everybody was working for somebody, and they wanted this covered up. So they had to pay the mob. Well, Alan Klein made sure that witnesses got paid off, and nobody would, everybody would have their story straight. It's sad. And that's also the reason why the police were involved, because there was not a thorough investigation of what happened. Now, this guy Jesse, he was a close friend, and he's saying that he lived nearby the hotel, and when he heard that this happened, when he got to the hotel, he was one of the other witnesses who, were trying to see, how we do. A bunch of police cars come out everywhere, and here we are looking out our windows, coming out our doors, trying to be nosy. I'm one of them. No judgment here. So, but this Jesse guy saying that he saw Sam Cooke's red Ferrari in the hotel parking lot. The door was open and the car was still running. So if y'all had went into the hotel room and all of that happened like the girl Alita Boyer said it happened, then why was his car still running? Why was the door open? Moving on. So that's one witness who, had a piece of evidence that would have been, sweet to mention in court. Now, this right here puts the icing on the cake. There was somebody who knew Sam, who knew somebody, that was related, had ties with a mafia godfather named Carlos Marcello, and they knew someone from the LAPD, who investigated Sam's murder at the time. And here's how it goes. So Johnny Angel stated that he was talking to someone. No, this guy named Effort. There was this guy named Leo Effort. I'm sorry about the baby, y'all. Leo Effort. I guess that's how you pronounce his name. I don't know. He was telling this guy Johnny that he knew exactly, how Sam died. And he's like, I'm going to tell you this one time, but don't make me tell you again. He knew some of the guys that Alan Klein hired. Now, this is nobody that was brought into the courtroom. Now, I forgot to tell y'all that Sam Cooke had told a few people that he was going to fire Alan Klein and J.W. Alexander. Because like I said, early on in the video, Sam, I don't know what the story was. I guess it's like he got sick 1 week, actually a week before he got killed. So yeah, Sam was gonna fire J.W. and Alexander. J.W. Alexander and Allen because they were on some slick stuff, and he found out about it. He was sick, and he had a chance to go over his paperwork and all of that, and he noticed things that he did not sign. He caught up to the BS. I ain't gonna curse. He caught up to the BS. Now, so Effort and Johnny, or Johnny, went with a friend, to these guys, and they kind of eased the subject in there, just little hee hee ha ha. Yeah, man, it was a shame what happened to Sam Cooke. Like, I wonder what happened to him. And, they little big mouth self told, and they basically was like, yes, Klein ordered for Sam to be taken out. And they said that it was top LAPD cops that he hired and paid for it with the money that he had been stealing with Sam. So, of course, Alan Klein knew how to lure Sam, and then it only made sense. It's only somebody that knows you, that you trusted. Of course, Alan Klein know how Sam was with the women, and he know that yes, Sam is gonna go somewhere with a woman. So he set up this girl to lure Sam back to the hotel. Now, this woman he paid, she was a prostitute. Everybody know Lisa Boyer was a prostitute. So she, catches his attention, of course, and she lures him back to the hotel. Now, I read some sources that, sometimes she had told Sam that, it was her home, and, or, she just told him she preferred to go to that hotel. Now, there was a phone call that was made while he was at Martoni's. Yes, there was a call. Somebody, the thugs that Alan hired had somebody at gunpoint and told him to call Martoni's and to tell Sam to come to PJ's. And that's where she was. She was at PJ's nightclub, and that's where he met her. It wasn't at Martoni's. And there was another witness, another friend, who said that the whole time that Sam was the whole time that Sam was at Martoni's, he was alone. He had never met anybody there. So it had to be at PJ's nightclub where the girl was. So she got his attention there, and then she got him, at closing time to take her to the Hacienda Hotel or the motel. As soon as they got to the room, that's when the thugs and the cops were waiting for him, and they beat his behind with bats and everything. And that explains why his body was so badly beaten and broken up. Somehow Sam was able to escape the room, and he ran to his car again. This explains why his car would be open and running in the hotel parking lot. But by him probably being beaten that badly, he probably couldn't move like that. And they caught up to him in a limo. They caught up to him, pulled him inside, and they shot him. They said he was shot under the armpit. And that's when they stripped him of his clothes and the money that he had on him. And that's why all he had on was a trench coat. So, and then they took him back to the motel, and that's where they staged everything. And, it was said that, he's a black man. So they're gonna, and this is, Alan Klein really tried to ruin his image. Because everybody will tell you, Sam would not be violent with anybody unless somebody was violent with him. He had that little Malcolm X thing going. And then, and come on now. Like, he wouldn't have to rape nobody. And like I said, if her, story had been true, then that would say, why wouldn't you get out the car and run? Like, why wouldn't you get out the car and run if first of all, you getting in a car with somebody, okay, you was a prostitute. And that wasn't brought up in court either, just to let y'all know. You could have ran. You could have did something if you felt like you was finna be raped. And then you in the hotel room, why would you grab his clothes? But you didn't say that in court, yet his clothes were missing. Anyways, so that's basically what happened. They staged the motel scene, and they told Bertha and this prostitute, hey, this is the story y'all gonna tell. Of course, don't mention us, don't mention anything else. And then there's another little saying that while in court, Sam's father, Reverend Charles, he was, managed to get a seat behind Bertha Franklin. And he asked her, why did you kill my son? And she told him, I didn't kill your son. And that's basically kind of like a slick confession, like, yeah, it wasn't really me. But, where were these witnesses? Why weren't these witnesses brought into court? And that should tell you why, because they were paid off. Alan Klein hired the attorney that was supposed to have been representing Sam Cooke. Or some say, they represent Barbara since she's his wife. Another reason why witnesses and evidence was not brought up. It was a whole setup. Going to court and everything. The evidence not being recorded. Especially the autopsy. That's the main part in the case, the autopsy. The murder weapon. I think either Bertha had a 22 caliber, and then it was saying that Sam was shot with a 38, or vice versa. She had a 38 and he was shot with a 22. It was, something. And, that's basically I believe this story is true out of anything because the evidence points to it. And, it's, of course, everything that Alan Klein did. Like, after the trial and everything, Alan Klein had everything in his name, and he did not give the family anything. The only people who really got something out of it was his brother L.C. Cooke, because L.C. Cooke had most songs on the company, on the record company that Sam Cooke founded, and Barbara. But Alan Klein didn't really give them much, only enough to basically survive. All his other kids and Sam had big plans for his kids and his other family members. He was going to help them. He was going to give them money to start businesses of their own. But, when they called Alan Klein and they were like, hey, where's our share from, what our father was going to give us? Yeah, he told them people, get out of his face. He wasn't giving them a dime. He even went as far as, being bold. Like, he hired thugs and other people to kind of threaten them or scare them off. Like, stop calling me, asking me for stuff. I'm like, I'm not giving y'all nothing. And so, eventually they did give up. But I wouldn't have gave up. All of them, the kids, everybody should have came together and filed a lawsuit. And just like they were able to later on down the road find the original records where Sam Cooke had assigned, it's too bad he didn't have a will, but the records where he assigned himself as the president or whatever, they should have presented those to a lawyer. They should all came together and found a lawyer and got the money that they deserve. It's good now that everybody is being made aware of what actually happened, and it's aware, it's good that we're aware of how things were going then. It is a sad story, and it is a sad situation. The only people that's to blame is Alan Klein. I mean, Sam Cooke was only guilty of trusting the wrong people. It's not that he was a womanizer or anything like that. He just trusted the wrong people. And, he was trying to make it right. That's why he was going to fire Alan Klein. But Alan Klein let his greed get to him, and he got to him first, unfortunately. But a lot of people admired Sam Cooke, and, it's saying that his funeral in Chicago was at least 200,000 people. He had a funeral for Chicago and a funeral for Los Angeles to those who lived in each of those places. It was really, really sad, and immediately, a lot of people knew that the story of what happened was not the true story. So in the end, Alan Klein did not ruin Sam Cooke's name. If anything, it was him, who ruined his own name. And there are a lot of, books and articles that won't mention the dirty deed that Alan Klein was doing. Sam Cooke was not the only person. It was the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or something like that. He messed them over, and it was said that he was the cause of their breakup. But That's what happened to Sam Cooke. And, this is the story that I actually believe out of all the stories. Because all the evidence just piles up against it, okay? With that being said, we're going to wrap this video up. Thank you guys for watching and listening. I hope you guys hit that like and subscribe button. It's my first video, but eventually it'll get better, I hope. And also, if you would like me to do a video on a person, please comment down below the name. I take all requests, it don't matter. Thank you all for watching and supporting. See you next time.